Hello, fellow masochists, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell, and it's Saturday night. It could be a relaxing, fun time to refresh and recharge from the week, but the U.S. men's national team played a game, so let the disappointment reign. Joining me to break down the USA's 2-0 loss to the Republic of Korea is a man who, if nothing else, got to celebrate at least one brief moment from this game. Joe Lowry did the introduction of Folarin Balogun in the second half make up for the entire rest of the performance.
I mean, how could that not make you smile? Balogun came on immediately, had some successful battles with Kim Min-jae, then proceeded to miss two shots right on the doorstep, racked up the XG, had some impactful moments. This is my Super Bowl, Taylor, this whole thing.
We'll get into this much more in detail. Did you feel better or worse about Balogun at full time?
Better. I mean, actually
okay.
the same, because I've been high on him the whole time, and I thought he was quite good in this game.
All right. Well, we will certainly dive into that later in the episode. For now, setting the stage. As of today, we have 279 days until the 2026 World Cup. We're recording this Saturday night, as I said. Including this current one, we have 4 international breaks between now and the beginning of the tournament. That does not count a potential January camp, nor the international window just before the start of the World Cup, because we would assume that squad is going to be ideally finalized by then. So not a ton of time. With the loss, the U.S. record under Pochettino is now 9 wins, 1 draw, 7 losses. Very little in between with this team. 23 goals for and 22 against. And for this loss, there were a few players that came out relatively unscathed, a few who did the opposite of that, and overall a feeling that this was certainly not a surprise result, which is kind of a bummer given the World Cup is right around the corner. Joe, is there any reason for this not to be just kind of a straight-up disappointing result for you?
No, not really. I think what you said is true, Taylor. There are players here that came out of this game with their hands fairly clean. Some of the players off the bench, I think, were quite good in this game. We've already mentioned one of them. Although we should note that South Korea basically stopped playing in the second half because they had that 2-0 lead heading into halftime. I think the U.S. outshot them something like 14-1 in the second 45 minutes. It was 14-1. But the game was basically over, right? I mean, the U.S. still didn't show that many signs of going in there and finding goals other than that Chris Richards chance off of the Sebastian Berhalter set piece, which I think that just needs to be the whole U.S. game plan, right? Is just Seb Berhalter booming the ball into the box for Chris Richards. We saw it work in the Gold Cup.
Maybe aware that ball is coming in. I still don't know if he actually meant to do anything
Taylor,
on that.
Connection. There's a connection there. Don't overthink it.
Okay.
Outside of that moment and then the Balogun couple of chances, those were the U.S. moments to equalize in the second half. But really, you didn't see a ton from South Korea in that second 45, all things considered. And really just an interesting game, across the board. One thing I said to you before we started recording, you can look at the U.S. from a whole lot of different angles right now. The angle I'm choosing to look at it from is that this team is a very, very interesting one to talk about right now. I truly have more juice for these shows than I have had in quite some time, because I think a lot of things are going wrong. I think a lot of things are preventable in terms of both the roster and the performance today and some of the things that were letting the U.S. down. This team is nothing if not intriguing at the moment.
Joe, longtime listeners may know that I have a little bit of uncertainty whenever anyone says something was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
That used to be my
I
wife's
needed
way of
exactly
saying
how
she did
you're
not like
thinking
a thing.
about it. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, sure.
Cool. Making sure that we're on the same page. Because, and I said this to you before we started recording as well, in our preview for these games, for this window, I felt like Japan coming in were the team that was going to cause immense problems for the United States. They're going to move the ball quickly. They're going to press high. They're going to press aggressively. They know how they want to play. They know the rotations they want to utilize. They know how to break down an opponent. And I felt like Korea, by contrast, were not as strong of a team, didn't have as much talent from top to bottom. And it felt for all the world like it was going to be a kind of stodgy team versus a team that we still don't quite understand in the U.S. Maybe we do understand them, just not in the way I would like. But I thought this was going to be an uneven back and forth, sort of just kind of not very aesthetically pleasing game, but one that we could take something away from. And so for the U.S. in that first half to be comprehensively dominated and outplayed and to some extent outworked is not a thing that I saw coming. Joe, I think you were not necessarily negative, but just more down on this roster, perhaps more realistic on this roster. Was that a first half that you were expecting?
I don't know if I was expecting the U.S. to have the defensive errors to the extent that they did, frankly. I mean, it wasn't as if the U.S. was totally toothless in this whole game or even in the first half, right? They have a couple of moments of nice progression, especially down that right side. It was nice to see Serginho Dest back into this team, and I thought he had a fairly good game, all things considered. But the degree to which the U.S. struggled with some basic defensive things in this game is a real question mark, Taylor.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is that is quickly becoming a real concern of the Mauricio Pochettino era. We talk about this sometimes as it relates to Josh Sargent and maybe why he gets some of that summer ban treatment from Mauricio Pochettino, where he's not involved over the summer for the U.S. I think back to that Nations League semifinal loss to Panama back in the March window. And it wasn't just Sargent, but it was partially Josh Sargent. In that game against Panama, the U.S. were carved wide open in that press over and over and over again. And in this game against South Korea, even in just the first half, before South Korea, I think, really largely stopped playing, the U.S. were picked apart in their press, they were picked apart in their mid-block, and they were picked apart in their low block. And we saw that pay dividends for South Korea on both of the goals they score. This is becoming a real concern for me, Taylor, where under Greg Berhalter, there were flaws. Don't get me wrong. We talked about them on this show. I think you and I were both ready to move on from Greg Berhalter and think U.S. soccer did the right thing by moving on after Copa America. But you look at a strength of the Berhalter era, it was this team's defensive play. That was the backbone of them all the way throughout World Cup qualifying. That was what made them competitive up into the round of 16 at the World Cup. And now, against decent but not spectacular opposition, South Korea is certainly better than Panama, decent but not spectacular opposition, the U.S. have really struggled to defend. And it is, it's becoming a real problem.
Decent but not spectacular is the best way to summarize that Korea team, who looked excellent on the evening. Son Heung-min looked pretty unplayable, or at least like U.S. defenders didn't really know how to play him. But I think a lot of other players, whom we will discuss as we go, sort of shown in their ability to create space and create opportunity. If I am a South Korean fan, I'm very happy. I'm especially happy that Jurgen Klinsmann was sitting in the stands and no longer coaching the team. I think on the Discord, somebody pointing out that he is very content to watch this game, be proud of his son, and count the money from the checks that these two federations paid him to.
Why not?
I don't know, help them get to the point they're at now. Joe, let's take a look at the U.S. lineup. Let's go there with their kind of basic approach, basic formation, basic things they were trying to do. And it was not a surprising lineup necessarily, but there were surprises within it. You have Tristan Blackman starting alongside Tim Ream. We thought it would be Chris Richards, so some experimentation there. We had Josh Sargent starting up top, Damian Downs and Florian Balogun being the other possibles there. Balogun joining the camp late maybe is why he doesn't start this one. As you said, he looks livelier. He looks more involved when he does come on. So perhaps that was Sargent performing in training. We'll see what happens against Japan. And then we had Weah and Pulisic switching sides. Tim Weah on the left, Christian Pulisic on the right. What did you make of those small changes to what we expected to see?
Let's start with the center back option. I'll sort of work my way through that list. I didn't have any issue seeing Blackman and Ream. I wanted to see some center back experimentation in this window. This was probably the center back pairing that I would be least excited about of the possible options across the four, so Richards and Banks being the other two. But I was curious to see what Tristan Blackman could bring to this U.S. team. Skeptical a little bit that he would be an immediate impact player, but open to him being a player who could help boost this U.S. group, because Tim Ream, we've talked about it over and over again, should not have his starting spot etched in stone ahead of the World Cup. Blackman, as maybe we'll talk about later, didn't really cover himself in glory in this game. I think I'm kind of good on that for the foreseeable future. Tim Ream, though, didn't help him out a whole lot in this game. So that's the center back situation. I didn't have any issue with it at all. I was happy to see some experimentation. It didn't quite pan out. Moving up to the number 9 spot, I fully expect that Pochettino rates Florian Balogun higher than Josh Sargent. Although maybe that's a foolish thing to say, because predicting what Mauricio Pochettino wants to do is proven to be very, very difficult. But I just don't know how you could really see it another way at this point. So it didn't bother me too much, because Balogun coming late to camp, the injury stuff with Monaco recently, I don't think that's a huge surprise. The way a Pulisic thing, Taylor, I think is fascinating right now for the U.S., where Pochettino, and it's become a bit of a meme, has talked about how he wants to play Weah on the left because of his eye dominance, right? Where one eye is in Pochettino's mind better on that side for Weah, which means he sees the field better and all these things. So Weah played on the left. Pulisic played a slightly freer role on the right, where he had a little more license to roam. And at times they swapped spots in this game even. But I thought Weah was basically invisible in this game on that left side. And he has been so much more productive, Tim Weah, over on the right. If you think about Tim Weah as a player, he's not a 1v1 dribbler. Like, he's not a guy who wants to come inside on that right foot and go and create and dribble past people. No, his dribbling numbers throughout his entire career have been really low. What makes Weah such a good soccer player is that he's incredibly committed defensively. He's a straight line player, and he can combine in tight spots. Like, not beating players off the dribble, but combining with whoever's around him, right? With these little tight bits of 1-2 passing. Weah put over on the left side, I think, was isolated and like I said, a non-factor in this game. And Pulisic on the right, I thought actually had a pretty good game. but I think there are ways to maximize those players a bit more, where you can maybe set them up in a slightly different way that makes everything flow a bit better. Taylor, what did you think of Weah on the left? Because now we're growing into a larger sample size of seeing Weah on the left under Pochettino.
I didn't love it. Overall, I didn't really love any part of the U.S. attack. And I didn't think Pulisic had that much better of a game than Weah. I thought both were largely anonymous. Weah has to come out due to looks like a hamstring tweak, if not outright pull. Pulisic, for his part, creates some shooting opportunities, is the one who seems most likely to want to try stuff on the ball or has most license to try stuff. Luna, by contrast, I think will try stuff occasionally, but mostly was looking to kind of link up and facilitate play. Pulisic more so trying to turn and shoot and thread the needle. But at least in the opening 10 or 15 minutes, it was a lot of errant passes from Pulisic. It was a lot of miscontrols, and it was a lot of sort of trying things when maybe recycling possession wouldn't have been the worst idea. Because I do think the way the U.S. tried to transition to attack, and I'm emphasizing tried, because I don't think they did a great job of it, did sort of allow Korea to start dictating the tempo of the game. It allowed them to go direct because the U.S. would get stretched and then turn the ball over. And it allowed them to just start kind of dictating passages of play. And so I think sometimes you have to have attackers who can alleviate that pressure and kind of change the momentum a little bit. And I don't think we saw that from Pulisic or Weah, which is also at the same time maybe unfair because I'm asking two attackers to kind of make a difference for this team, whereas perhaps it's that midfield that should have been the one to do it. Leaving Luna aside for a moment, I expected it was going to be Berhalter and Adams. I've made the argument in past episodes that might be Mauricio Pochettino's preferred midfield pairing right now is Berhalter and Adams, and that maybe McKennie is secondary right now. Maybe Johnny is the same. Maybe other options are as well. And so you come into this game expecting those two to have some consistency, some connection, some relationship, and I don't think we saw much of one. I think both goals come from the two midfielders being way too far apart with huge space in between to be exploited, and I think the same goes for the center backs. You already mentioned how there was some sort of shakiness between the two, both on an individual level, but I think in a relationship standpoint. And so even the areas of the pitch that I expected to be more stable and more reliable, at least for large stretches of this game, looked very vulnerable, and I come away from it not really being sure what our strengths are at this point.
Yeah, I want to go into the defensive stuff more and into that double pivot and into the center back pairing. I do want to go back to the attack just for one more minute.
Sure.
I disagree on Pulisic. He had moments that are exactly what you described, where he is forcing something or is a bit sloppy. He was also, to me, outside of Dest and Luna occasionally. Luna, I thought, was good in this game. I didn't think he broke the game open by any means.
True.
Pulisic was the one most consistently causing problems for South Korea, at least in my mind. 8th minute, really nice through ball to Serginho Dest. That was one of those nice progressions down the right side that I talked about. 17th minute, purposeful dribble and tries to find Josh Sargent. You see him later in the second half. He's constantly the first one to lose balls, I think, for the U.S. attack, where he was bright and lively in this game, keeps possession alive for the U.S., did this all game long. Was not perfect by any means, but I think he was and is generally better suited to playing a little bit shaded towards the right. And to go back to the setup I alluded to that I would like to see from the U.S. if you're going to want to play around a little bit with some of this stuff and put Luna into this team, and how this looks with Malik Tillman potentially is a different story, maybe. But Weah, I think, is so clearly at his best on the right side. I think there is just no doubt about that in my mind. Pulisic, I think you can play him in a sort of similar role to what you did in this game, where you have him shaded at least towards the middle or over to that right side. And then you put Luna where he's been playing for RSL and where he's played a good number of minutes for the national team as well. You put him in the left half space. And so you have Weah on the right, Pulisic more through the middle, but still shaded towards that right side where you can go and find the game. And then you have Luna over on the left. I think that works a lot better than what we saw in this game, because effectively in this game, Taylor, you were playing down an attacker because Weah is just so uncomfortable in that left-sided role. And so Pulisic, for all the nice moments he had, didn't have as much help, and Luna didn't have as much help and runners to play into with Weah tilted towards that left side. So anyway, that's my bit on the attack. We talked about this a good bit in the Discord during the game, Andrew and some other folks and I. And it just seems like Poch has tried this too much already, even in limited opportunities of coaching Tim Weah. And I'm just a little surprised he went back to it again in this game.
I think that's all very fair. I think, like, from my perspective, this is perhaps unfair, but I think because I expect Pulisic to be the one who has the license to drive at defenders and try stuff. And maybe that pass doesn't come off. Maybe that take on doesn't come off. But I think he's the one who most is told by the coach, go try stuff, go try to make stuff happen. I think I then hold him to a higher standard. So when he does that stuff better than anybody else, I'm not surprised. But I still wish it could be at a slightly higher level and slightly more consistent. And then I think on top of that, in the second half especially, I think Berhalter, one of the reasons why I'm okay with him continuing to be in the lineup, certainly in the squad, is that he offers set-piece potential. And his corners were accurate and dangerous. We talked about the free kick to Chris Richards, which I thought was excellent. By contrast, Pulisic fails to clear the first defender multiple times on his corners, misses the set-piece pretty wide, and I think maybe part of my frustration with him is fixated on those set pieces and the fact that he still continues to be involved, and I don't think he should be.
I could not endorse that statement harder, Taylor. To me, that is partially on Pulisic, no doubt about it. I'm also happy to toss some of the blame on Pochettino for that stuff, right? I mean, like why is he being allowed to take the set pieces? And to go back through some of the moments that we're talking about, Taylor, for Christian Pulisic on set pieces especially, 21st minute corner kick, doesn't create anything, although it's not a bad ball necessarily. 60th minute, corner kick, can't clear the first man. 77th minute, does good work to draw the free kick, then takes it and shoots way over the bar. Yeah. We have a good bit of evidence that says Christian Pulisic is not an inspiring set piece taker. If anything, he's net neutral and probably a little bit worse than that across the board. Why do you go out and hire a big time coach who has a big pedigree that should be drawing respect from a locker room? What is the point of doing that if you're not going to leverage that cachet into being able to make better decisions and to remove some of the ego from your players and actually make better choices on the field? Like we see this happen and pop up now in multiple different ways. We see it with Pochettino seemingly leaning so hard into players that he likes and that try stuff and that he thinks bring good attitudes to camp. That's the explanation, I think, for a lot of players that weren't brought back in over the summer. Tessman, Scally, Sargent, the center backs. I'm not trying to disparage any of those players' character. I don't know what happens there. But it seems pretty clear to me that if Poch is going for the more workman-like Berhalter types, that there's some sort of through line there. Like, you're not seeing Weston McKennie and some of these other big-picture players brought into this window, the one we're in right now. Why not? Like, why can Pochettino not manage that locker room? Why can Pochettino not manage the set-piece taking stuff? Why has his relationship with Pulisic seemingly already fractured in terms of all the summer stuff, even though they both say it's behind them? That seems to me like such a huge potential benefit of hiring one of the most famous soccer people on the planet, and you're not leveraging, or you're not able to leverage any of that cachet into actually better soccer decisions. That, Taylor, is just an insane frustration to me.
It's a very fair point of frustration. I'm sure we will talk about Pochettino more in this episode. For now, we're going to take a break, then we'll come back and talk tactics, approach, why things didn't work, some individual performances, and maybe what we want to see against Japan. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. We are continuing to break down the USA's 2-0 loss to the Republic of Korea in a friendly that didn't feel very friendly from my perspective. What I think we're trying to do here is trying to kind of drill deeper down into where we both are, some of the commonalities, and then some of our common understanding, and then some of our common understanding of what's gone wrong. And so, Joe, with that in mind, let's get to that first half, which was so dominant by that Korea team. And I want to look at what the U.S. was trying to do on the defensive side of things. Were there any parts of the defensive game plan that you felt were working or were effective, or was it largely kind of inconsistent or erratic across the board on the defensive side?
It was pretty erratic as far as I'm concerned. There were moments of positivity.
That's where I am as well.
Yeah, I mean, there were moments where the U.S. Turned their defensive work and their press into opportunities. I have one down in the 14th minute where the U.S. forced a high turnover, and Sebastian Berhalter takes a shot, low-quality shot, but a shot nonetheless, directly on the back of that pressing win. There were a few moments where they made South Korea uncomfortable. Yeah, Taylor, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have any other, moments in which they did actually effectively pull off a press? Because that is the only one I think I have.
Yeah, it's the only one I have down. I think there's another moment where they sort of end up forcing a sloppy pass from South Korea out of the back, but they don't create a chance off the back of that, the U.S. I think Joe, the goalkeeper, great, elite name, good guy, I'm sure. I think there's a moment where that goes awry, but really, it was few and far between. And the other side of that sword came and hit the U.S. repeatedly. Taylor, I clipped a moment and put it out on Twitter and Blue Sky. I clipped a moment in the press where it's almost staggering, actually, how discombobulated the U.S. seemed to be. So the U.S. in general in this game sort of defended out of a 4-4-2 shape with Diego Luna up top next to Josh Sargent. Pulisic was shaded a little higher on the right than Tim Weah was on the left. Taylor, I don't know if you noticed this or if you'd agree.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that was South Korea were effectively building out of a back three for most of this game. And so Pulisic was almost at times becoming a third forward to go and match up man-to-man across the back line for South Korea. And so it was a little asymmetrical, and it had some ebbs and flows to it in terms of the positioning, and that's okay. But the moment that I clipped and put out on social media is in the 32nd minute, and it's almost baffling to me, Taylor, why I have a hard time even trying to explain it. So Diego Luna is stepping forward to press, and he doesn't use his cover shadow to block off a central midfield option for South Korea. And as this is happening, cover shadow would be if Graham is trying to pass the ball to you, Taylor, and you're standing sort of behind me, and I'm the defensive player, I'm going to go press Graham, but I'm going to do it in a way that I am blocking off access to you. I'm going to block the passing lane with my body positioning. And so the idea behind cover shadow is like there's this imaginary shadow behind me that you're stuck in, and Graham can't find you. Graham can't pass the ball. So we all know that. So Luna doesn't block off access into midfield at all. So his pressing run is no good. And then Tyler Adams, while this is happening, defensive midfielder Tyler Adams, just completely vacates the central midfield space to go close down the wing back on the right for South Korea, which Max Arfson could just do instead. So Adams races out of midfield for no reason. And Diego Luna is also racing forward out of midfield. And South Korea just break lines because the central midfielder is wide open, and they progress into the attacking half. And we saw that sort of press breakdown a number of times, and the most notable sort of defensive breakdowns obviously were on the goals, which we can get to. But it's a theme, man. I talked about it in the A block. It's troubling how this team doesn't seem to know how to press or what their structure is supposed to be.
And even the communication within the defensive system is so often so lacking. Tyler Adams, that might be the worst performance I've seen from him, from the U.S. or otherwise. Bad. That first half was rough. And I cannot tell. Obviously, I have bias in the favor of Tyler Adams. People will know that from my love of him. If I had a tattoo on him, Joe, I don't think people would be surprised. But I don't, or of him, I should say. But in this game...
No, Taylor's face on Tyler Adams' body. That's what
exactly, we have that relationship, for sure. No, I was struck by how much he was trying to do, especially on the defensive side, where sometimes he's, as you said, like cheating over to the left, sometimes he's cheating over to the right, sometimes he's stepping up and trying to close down, sometimes he's dropping in between the center backs. And my assumption is that when a player is trying to do that much, it's because he's been asked to do that much by the manager. That is my hope, at least, because it felt like otherwise he was just all over the place, being chaotic and not a good type of chaotic. But that aside, let's say it was instruction. You still need communication. You still need some level of relationship with everybody around you. As I talked about already, there's moments when Adams and Berhalter just kind of split, and they are, in that 4-4-2, the two central pegs. If they both are moving wide into the half spaces, there's a pretty large space to attack. But then there's other moments. Joe and I texted a little bit about this one, but in the lead up to the first goal, there is a moment that I want to, first of all, give credit to Jae-Sung Lee, or Lee Jae-Sung, who is so smart. And I knew he was good from watching him. I knew he was good from our previews. I didn't know how good he was with his situational awareness. And this happened a couple different times. But for the first goal, it happens in particular. He basically moves into that cover shadow area of Tyler Adams. And Adams, at that point, turns while pointing behind him to Tristan Blackman, basically saying, he's yours now. He's your responsibility. And that's okay communication. That's the thing you're going to see defenders do. The problem is that Adams isn't actually looking at Blackman, and he's certainly not looking at Lee Jae-Sung, because if he were, he would notice that as soon as he does that, Lee stops, turns, and goes wide, and now Adams is completely unaware of that. Blackman, though, has to make the decision of, I've been told to mark him. Do I go with him and leave him, or do I go with him and vacate space, or do I stay here and leave him wide open? And he mostly leaves him open, but Blackman does kind of step towards him a few yards, and that is why there's even more space because Reem hasn't come over. There's that giant gap for Son Heung-min to run into, but it's also a giant gap for Jae-Sung Lee to basically take a touch, wait for the run to start, and then play that ball in. And those little moments of disconnect are, number one, things I don't expect from a kind of a veteran player in a team that has a lot of familiarity, but two, the moments that will completely destroy the team if they're not fixed, and if they're playing a higher level of opposition, they're going to be exploited even more. And this felt so much like the USA's round of 16 elimination from 2022 against the Netherlands, where they were just kind of opened up time and time again. They didn't really seem to have answers for how to resolve that. And then on an individual basis, there were just moments of inexplicable decision-making or inexplicable positioning that basically just has me coming out of this one thinking maybe things are worse than even I, the eternal optimist with the U.S., was allowing them to be.
Yeah, and to pour a little more gasoline on that fire of panic, Taylor, for you, I think you're spot on with a lot of that communication discussion. I think that's like the middle breakdown in a series of at least 3 breakdowns on this play.
Fair.
So, no, but you're right to highlight it, but just to try to finish this out, at least from my perspective, before the communication thing really becomes an issue in the first place, I think a huge issue on this goal and also the second goal that South Korea scored is just that the U.S. has no pressure on the ball. And this is what I'm talking about with at times Christian Pulisic having to step forward to go and actually match up with South Korea on that side because South Korea built with 3. In this moment, Pulisic steps forward and gets caught a bit high, which is not ideal in this case for the U.S.'s shape because when that happens, South Korea can progress the ball down the left side, the U.S.'s right side, and there's no one to cover. Like Adams doesn't know if he can step forward because he's still trapped a little bit deep. Dest is pinned by the opposing wide player on that left side. And all of a sudden, South Korea have, I kid you not, 6 yards of space to go and play that through ball to Son. It's bad, Taylor. It's really bad, and it wasn't the only time that we saw that in the first half, by the way. South Korea were purposely trying to overload that left side, the U.S.'s right, and the U.S. just didn't have any answers for it. When Pulisic was caught high and narrow, they would either move a midfielder out wide, they drop a wing back, or they would rotate and overload that left side, the U.S.'s right, and they would play down that side. It happened multiple times, and at times the U.S. dealt with it okay. Pulisic was able to balance that defensive responsibility. But in this moment, it's bad. It's really bad. And South Korea make the U.S. pay. And the other bookend, right? If that's the beginning defensive breakdown, is that there's no pressure to the ball, which is big no-no, number one, in basically any moment defensively. Then you talked about some of the breakdown between Adams and Blackman. The third breakdown, I think, is a lot on Tim Ream, frankly, where Tim Ream is leaving Son onside. Is just a little bit slow to step forward. Mm-hmm. Tristan Blackman, we mentioned it earlier, had a really rough game. I do not think he looked good at all. Did not quite look up to the level, which, again, isn't a huge shock, all things considered. But Ream did not do him a lot of favors. I think Tristan Blackman looks a lot better. If it's Chris Richards starting next to him, Ream is a little slow to step, and Son then, as a result, beats the offside trap, and South Korea can progress forward from there. This is one of those moments where it's another reminder for me about where Tim Ream is as a player, where he is in his career, and also not just to really pinpoint him here, but you look at the back four for the U.S. in this game, and maybe this is another how much is Pochettino watching the tape sort of moment where if your structure is going to break down in this game, and it did, you need high-quality individual defenders. And the back four for this U.S. team from right to left.
Joe?
I know. Well, hold on. Let me name these guys. Serginho Dest, Tristan Blackman, Tim Ream, and Max Arfson. Like there's not a single, and we texted about this, there's not a single like high-quality defensive player in there. There are good players in their relative positions, and there's Serginho Dest, of course, being the best of that bunch. But none of those players are excellent at defending. And you saw that in this game a number of times where Ream and Blackman in particular were exposed because South Korea had so much success playing right up the gut of the U.S. for some of the defensive breakdown reasons we've already talked about, where those two guys were at times almost like trying to outdo the other one with defensive errors. There's a moment in the 52nd minute where Tim Ream steps forward in the press, the ball slips by him, and then Tristan Blackman does a Van Persie diving header, basically right in the center circle, and doesn't clear it far enough, and South Korea are playing in behind, and they end up getting bailed out a little bit. But it was rough, and I don't know that you look at this back four and you expect it to be much other than rough when you're stuck in some of those defensive phases.
Yep. And to continue the defensive concern, it's been the concern with Dest for me, I think, like from the jump when he first declares for the United States, is the idea that I think in particular 1v1 aerials when he is sort of having to track the defender, where it's basically hit over the line and he is now running back trying to defend, are absolutely not his strong suit. And I don't think he is great in the air to begin with, but when he's tracking and running and trying to make up ground and then defend in the air, he usually ends up not really doing anything that well. And that seemed to be a thing that Korea were targeting, that they went direct at him, either via like kind of just route one balls or big diagonal switches, and it felt like they were trying to kind of target him 1v1 in the air. And even when he does do well, and there are moments when he does, there are then loose balls, second balls that kind of pop up, and then the U.S. is stretched out and doesn't kind of react to them quickly, either because Adams has moved wide or Berhalter himself has stayed wide, or they're both kind of too far forward from trying to kind of help with the press. But as a result, there's this huge amount of space that Korea would then send numbers into, win that second ball, and away they go. And that's not really on Dest, but I think it speaks to him in isolation is not a lockdown defender, and it's going to require other people around him to help out. And when you don't have that, you see how things kind of catapult from there. Yeah. On top of that, I think there are moments when Dest has good individual moments. There's a few different blocks where he like slides in and gets a foot to it, gets a toe to it. But then when you go back and watch, it is almost always because he is 1 to 2 seconds too late of like, oh, I need to track that guy. And you can see him sort of like, oops, I need to run. And then he makes up the ground, which is to his credit. But against maybe quicker opposition or more dangerous opposition, I'm not sure he has that opportunity to make it up. So in the end, it's another kind of area where the U.S. has theoretical strength, but once you kind of start really getting into it and looking at it frame by frame, or not even frame by frame, maybe it doesn't even require that level of insight, it just becomes another area of concern for a team that seems to have lots of them.
Yeah, and one of the takeaways from this game, right, in tandem with that, Taylor, is just how much the U.S. need Chris Richards to be on the field for every moment next summer, right? I mean, that for me was just blindingly clear before this game started. And again, there was a flicker of hope that maybe Blackman can be a guy next to Richards. I don't think a Blackman-Ream pairing was ever really going to work, but the hope was that Blackman looked like the better of those two players, and all of a sudden Pochettino has a decision to make. He doesn't really have any decisions to make still at this stage. Like, Richards is so clearly that guy, and the reality is that everybody in that back line suffers when he's not there. I should say maybe something similar about Jedi Robinson, where Max Arfson on the left side I thought was just pretty anonymous in this game. I didn't think he had a bad game necessarily. I didn't think he was a liability defensively. Maybe that's partially because South Korea were really building down that other side, so he wasn't involved in a ton of the decisive defensive moments in that first half, which is where the game was won for South Korea in general. But it was rough, and Richards comes out of this game an even bigger winner than he was coming into it. Taylor, can I quickly, I know maybe we need to take another break. Can I quickly talk about the second goal very briefly?
Please.
Because you mentioned...
We're good.
No, I'm going to talk really fast. If you're listening at 1.5 speed, watch out and buckle up. When you talk about Berhalter and Adams being kind of separated from each other and being leaky, really in this game, easy to bypass, I think the second goal is a really good example of that.
Joe, I just want to preemptively disagree with you. I don't understand how a loose square that allows a 10-yard gap for a player on all sides doesn't just lock them down. What are you talking about?
No, I mean, Taylor, the loose square is where you want to be. That's the thing. And I want to preempt some of this by saying there are other breakdowns in the play that I want to get to shortly. But when you're talking about Sebastian Berhalter on this sequence, I mentioned that cover shadow concept a minute ago. I don't think Berhalter even sees that Son has drifted in behind him into this pocket of space where all of a sudden Son is between that leaky square that Taylor's talking about. Where it's Dest on one side of Son, it's Ream, it's Berhalter, and it's Adams making the four corners of that lovely quadrilateral. And South Korea just play the ball into Son. And Berhalter, in that moment, you would love to see him blocking off that pass, right? You would love to see his body positioning blocking off that pass with his cover shadow. And it just doesn't happen. He checks his shoulder, but I don't think he ever sees Son standing there. And that makes it so easy for South Korea to progress through the lines, and then Son and South Korea's excellent attacking players go and make the U.S. pay, right? South Korea have the quality to make you pay if you're going to give them that kind of space. It's a bad moment. If you just freeze frame it with Son on the ball in the middle of that quadrilateral, it is rough. So I think Berhalter in that moment, that's probably a bit of a learning experience for him as far as his defensive positioning is concerned. The other breakdowns in this play that I see, Taylor, very much like I talked about on the first goal, where's the pressure on the ball? Like, where is that coming from? Josh Sargent and Diego Luna are seemingly propelled by some sort of force field around the ball where they can't actually go in and close it down. And so that's the first problem, right? That doesn't really, Berhalter's issue doesn't really become a huge issue if the U.S. get pressure on the ball and force South Korea to recycle or to play backwards or whatever. But they can't for one of just many times in this game. And then that cascade of failure starts from there. So it's Sargent, it's Luna. It is that double pivot as well in this game. Adams, I thought, had a nightmare game on the ball where he shipped multiple good moments to South Korea in the U.S.'s own third.
Yep.
Comprehensively poor, really, defensively. And then I tossed the Adams bit in there just so that we didn't pile on Berhalter for the whole show.
Yeah, man. 3rd minute and 27th minute. Both times he's caught on the ball. One time leads to the free kick, but also like a really good shooting opportunity that's called back for the free kick. And the other one leads to, I think, a timely Ream intervention. Otherwise, it was like a 3v1 because Adams coughs it up. So again, moments that you don't expect from certain U.S. players. And then moments of defensive slack from the U.S. that maybe we have come to expect from them, leading to that 2-0 lead, which is how that half finished and how the game finished in the end. We're going to take one more break, Joe. We'll come back. We'll talk individual performers, positive and negative, and maybe, again, look ahead to Japan. I am nervous about that game. Back soon. Welcome back, everybody. We hope you didn't leave, and if you did, good riddance. We didn't want you anyway. Just kidding. We did. Hi. Good to have you. Good to have you. I'm still a little shocked from this one, Joe. Not because of the result, not because of a loss. A loss is a loss and a friendly. It's just that I did kind of think this was going to be a more stable team and a more stable performance. Some of that because this did feel like, to me, it was a lot of Poch's guys and players that Pochettino trusts. I wonder how much trust there is for some of these individual performers after that game. Let's start with, we've already talked about at length. We might just say, yeah, fine, and we keep moving with some of these. We might go longer on them, but Serginho Dest is back, Joe. We get him at right back, so there was no left back experimentation. We saw him occasionally involved in the attack. We saw him increasingly pegged back as the game went on. We talked about the defensive issues, such as they are. Any other thoughts on Serginho Dest?
Just to underscore that I really do think he was an attacking difference maker for the U.S. at times in this game, more than most U.S. players, and certainly more than we've seen from that right back spot all throughout the summer. And since Serginho Dest went down last year with that injury, 7th minute, nice play down the right wing. 16th minute, really great dribbling run into the final third. Basically just progresses the U.S. into the final third on his own, which is the magic of Serginho Dest, right? 41st minute, really nice work to play a cutback that finds Tim Weah. That was one of Weah's only meaningful actions, was crashing on that cutback. That's the last big moment I have for Dest in the attack, but that's a longer list than just about anybody else in this game. So I think the U.S. clearly missed Dest going forward. That is an ice-cold take. But I did genuinely enjoy watching him in this game. I just wish, to go back to something I said earlier, that we could have seen Dest and Weah combine and work some of the magic that we've seen work so well for the U.S. in the attack, with Pulisic maybe drifting over to that side from time to time. But I'm not sure if that's in the cards under Poch right now.
Joe, I said we're going to do individual performers. No, I'll save it. I'll save my one big sort of take. I have thoughts on tactics, and I have thoughts on formation specifically for that Japan game. But first, let's keep going with the players. So we talked Dest. We've talked about the back line a little bit. I agree with Max Arfsten. I don't think he was a liability or anything like it. And I thought, especially once he had a bit more attacking freedom, I thought he offered options wide, and I thought he made good usage of the time he did get on the ball. So I was fine with that one, though I welcome Jedi coming back. We've talked about Tyler Adams looking sloppy on the ball and sloppy in his positioning. So I'm not sure there's a ton more ground to cover there, ironically. Joe, what other individuals should we spend some time with?
I'm curious to pick your brain, Taylor, on Diego Luna, who I thought was good in this game. This maybe feels like a moment where I want to go back and just watch Diego Luna for 90 minutes. I've rewatched this game, but I want to go back and just pay attention to him, because I don't have him having a ton of game-breaking moments in this match where he's playing as the number 10. He had to work hard to find the ball at times because he was positioned pretty much right underneath Sargent, and I thought South Korea did a pretty good job of closing off access into him at times. But I don't have Luna down with a ton of really great line-splitting pass here, really great line-splitting pass there. But I also do not have a single negative moment for Diego Luna. I have positive defensive moments. I have good, simple passes and a couple of nice ones later on in the game. But Luna, to me, I don't know if it was that he was a byproduct of the fact that there wasn't a ton of dynamism going on around him, or if he really was just kind of good but not great in this game, or if I missed something. Taylor, what did you think of Diego Luna?
That is about it. Good but not great for me. Because I think he is tasked to some extent with being the creator and link, certainly when transitioning to attack, because he's staying higher. I think that he's the one they're looking for, and he's the one who's trying to show to be the kind of outlet to then turn and play forward. But also at times when Adams would either drop between the two center backs or go into kind of a left center back position, so then you would get a back three. That happened pretty often in the first half. Luna would end up coming very deep to try to get on the ball, to try to pick it up and make something happen. But nobody really came with him, and because of Korea's kind of defensive shape, when he would get the ball, it would sort of be like, turn, oh, no, it's the same obstacles ahead of me that were ahead of the guy behind me, so I guess I'll pass it backwards, or I guess I'll pass it out wide. And so I don't think he was able to do as much in that regard. The other thing I don't think he does as much that I would like to see him do is just shoot the ball and look to create his own shot. It seems like with Pulisic in there and moving central, with Sargent in there, with Weah wide, I felt like Luna oftentimes was looking to kind of dribble, pull somebody in, and then play a pass, or pull two in and then split them with a pass. And that's great because he can do it well. But also, I think he's a really good striker of the ball. We've seen that with some goals he's scored. We saw that with, I think it's Balogun, who has like a bouncing cutback to him in the second half that he hits first time on the volley and takes very cleanly. I think it hits a defender, but it's a great shot. And I think he can have those sort of moments of unpredictable shooting that end up in the back of the net. I don't feel like he was looking to shoot as much as he was trying to kind of like unlock the defense or set Pulisic up to shoot. And I think that meant he, a lot of times, wasn't adding that little spark that we sometimes expect him to add.
Yeah. I think that's a really helpful tailored perspective. I still want to go back and watch Luna again in this game because of all the attacking stuff we've already mentioned, where I just do not think that Pochettino optimized the U.S.'s attacking setup. I want to be clear. The U.S. is not an amazing attacking team regardless of where these dudes are positioned. Like moving way to the right and Pulisic at least a little bit further towards the left, even if that's not all the way on the left, that doesn't totally make the U.S. into this juggernaut. I don't think anybody's assuming that. But I do think there was some fruit that was left hanging there, and Luna, I like him in a central role. I don't know if that should quite be his total responsibility at the moment. But an interesting performance from Luna, all things considered, I thought.
Interesting in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, good,
Sure.
Mostly good.
What about our forwards? Josh Sargent definitely played the first 45, pretty sure?
Yes, Sargent's a good one to zero in on. He had a couple of positive moments, I thought, in hold-up play, a couple nice moments where he tries to help release the U.S. in transition, in attacking transition. In general, though, he was not able to get the better of the South Korean back line almost ever. In this match, he really struggled, I thought, to deal with Kim Min-jae and the rest of the defensive line for the visitors, maybe not quite. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about Josh Sargent in this game. Yep. We talked about some of the lack of defensive energy that popped up on that second goal. There were other moments like that from him in this game. The March match against Panama still really sticks in my mind for him on the defensive side. And he wasn't able to create enough separation to really be a threat on the ball, right? When the ball would come into him, he either wasn't strong enough or wasn't quick enough to redirect it to continue an attack. And Balogun comes on, and I know there's a game state thing going on here. So I want to try to even rein myself in here, where South Korea, I think I've said it multiple times, they just didn't need to play anymore, really, as far as the rest of this game was concerned, once Balogun got on the field. But the contrast between Sargent, there's a moment in the second half where he gets the ball in the left half space, and it's Kim Min-jae who comes out to deal with that, and basically Sargent gets pushed all the way to the left sideline. The contrast between a moment like that and Balogun coming on in the 62nd minute and 3 minutes later, at 65th minute at this stage, he runs to get on the end of a ball from Christian Pulisic, creates enough space on Kim Min-jae, the same defender that Sargent couldn't deal with earlier in the half, and has enough strength and quickness to play that cut back to Luna that you just talked about, Luna connecting with well. That was just such a clear difference between those two players. And it kind of confirms my priors on Balogun. Some maybe there's probably a bit of bias here, all things considered. I'm willing to admit that. But yeah, Sargent, I just think offered basically nothing in this game.
I don't think I have bias against Sargent, or I don't know why I would, but I definitely find myself frustrated by him when he plays for the U.S. And this game was no exception for the reasons you've already outlined. But one that I think we've talked about historically as bothering me, I don't think he gets his angles right when he tries to close things off. And so if listeners can picture this, let's say the goalkeeper has the ball, and he has the left center back on his left, the right center back, not surprisingly, on his right. If Sargent is coming in and his job is to close off that left center back, first of all, I think sometimes he is slow to do that. Second of all, when he does do it, he does this peculiar thing of like almost over pursuing, and so he'll go like past the line between the goalkeeper and the center back, and so he still cut it off. He still made that pass not enticing at all. But what happened multiple times in this game was he was kind of over pursued and a little bit close to the goalkeeper, so that when a midfielder would then check back in, there would be that bounce pass that the goalkeeper would play to the midfielder. The midfielder would lay it out to the left center back, and Sargent is now completely out of the play. And that can happen. You then want, if the goal is to kind of press and create some confusion, you want that forward to then turn and know, okay, now it's my job to go close that guy down, and I've got a haul. And I don't think he put himself in a good position to begin with, but routinely you can see him turn and have that little like, ugh, and then he goes, and oftentimes he doesn't go at 100%. He doesn't go full speed. He's like, all right, now I'll go close that guy down, I guess. And there's just a slowness to it that I think doesn't kind of speak to urgency, and it doesn't lead with urgency, and it doesn't require urgency of his teammates. And so it just feels like things get lethargic. He might be representative of that lethargy as opposed to a prime cause of it. but it's still just a frustrating moment when you want to see just a little bit more fight and a little bit more defensive work rate. So I don't think he did himself many favors. I'm not going to say Balogun was like head and shoulders better, but I think to your points, he makes differences. He tries stuff. He created some uncertainty. Yes, against a Korea team that were happy to just have 10 behind the ball in the box by that point. But still, he's trying. He's moving. I want to see him start that next game very, very much. Yeah. Joe, we talked a little bit about Weah, who does end up getting that injury. My guess is we won't see him against Japan. We hope he is back soon, ideally on the right side. And we have talked a good bit about Pulisic already in this game. Any of those you want to spend some more time on? Any of the substitutes you want to mention or talk it out?
Yeah, I think maybe moving to the bench. I thought a lot of the U.S. subs looked pretty good, and this is one of those moments where, again, it feels like there's a lot of game state stuff going on here where the U.S. are pushing, they're trying to create chances and had some success doing that late in the match. We've talked about some of that already. And so those players are probably naturally going to look a bit better than the guys who started this game. I thought Roldan was good in midfield. His whole late addition to this roster, very interesting. Very, very interesting that Pochettino, it sounds like, basically just watched the Leagues Cup final and was like, oh, that guy's pretty good. The quote from Pochettino in The Athletic via Henry Bushnell was, quote, "We were following him." Pochettino said this was on Friday. "We decided not to add him in this roster, but after we were seeing some things in the squad, and maybe we need one more player more with his characteristics. And we decided after his game against Miami in the final to add him." I don't know.
What does that
added
mean?
to the pile, right? Yeah, we were watching him, didn't want him, and then we watched him and thought he was good, but we'd also just started camp and needed people. I'm not exactly sure.
No, but what do you if you had to guess, Joe? Like, we need more players with his characteristics. Do you think that's leadership, like a veteran know-how, a veteran steel? Like, I'm not sure what that would be, because I don't mean to be disrespectful to Christian Roldan, and I won't be, because Seattle fans will come to my house and murder me. Yeah, but like, yeah, I don't think of him as being a player who's like, he's got that one thing that no one else has, but I do think of him as being a very good locker room presence, a very strong leader, and a very kind of ever-present fixture for a lot of different teams. So I do assume that was maybe they just needed just like somebody who knows camp and knows how to operate within a camp in that team.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine, but I think that's a pretty good guess, all things considered. I mean, Roldan, we've talked about it a bunch on the Tuesday show throughout the year, the MLS show. Roldan's been awesome this year as the defensive midfielder for Seattle in a double pivot, and Poch has been running that double pivot. He comes on for Adams in this game with a half hour left to play and defends as part of a double pivot where he tends to be the deepest player. I thought he looked pretty good in that role. On merit, I have zero issue with Adams being a part of this roster. Like, I think he has absolutely earned it.
Roldan or Adams?
Oh, sorry, Roldan. My mistake. Thanks for the catch there. Yeah, I have no issue with Roldan being part of this roster. It's still wild that he's not on this roster along with someone like Tanner Tessman, but here we are at this stage. I thought Roldan was good, was fine. Jack McGlynn, I thought, flashed some things both on corner kick that he has late in the game and just how quickly he moves the ball when the U.S. are chasing a goal. It would not shock me at all, Taylor, if we see him reprise this exact role where he comes on in the 79th minute of a game where the U.S. need a goal in a World Cup, comes on and he finally wrestles the set pieces away from Pulisic, we should note. He takes that corner kick when Pulisic is still on the field. And we see McGlynn try to get something for the U.S. on a long ball or just with his tempo and possession. I liked what we saw from McGlynn. I also liked, Taylor, what we saw a bit from Zendejas as well. Not flawless Zendejas, but he looked pretty tidy and efficient with some of his touches. Not perfect, but he is another player that I think we could see in a World Cup roster just because the U.S. is so thin in those kind of wide areas or even in the half spaces.
Going back to Roldan for a second.
Sure.
Given that he's been as good as he's been for Seattle this season, playing the role he's played, is there a chance that what Pochettino meant was we don't have anybody who can do what Tyler Adams does, aside from Tyler Adams, who didn't do it that well in the game, and so we want somebody else who potentially could?
Yeah, maybe.
Is he the backup Tyler Adams now?
In this camp, it sure seems that way, doesn't it? I mean, that would not shock me, and I don't have any issue with that. They're very different players, where I think Roldan's a little bit more comfortable in tight spots, not a ton, but certainly a bit more comfortable, and doesn't cover as much ground as Adams, even at this stage of Adams' career after all the injuries he's had. So they are different players, but yeah, Taylor, that seems like a possible read on this situation.
Okay.
To be honest, it seems so impossible to try to pick out what Pochettino means when he says most things. Maybe I'm overthinking stuff, but I just have not been able to predict basically anything that this man has been wanting to do, which makes this all very entertaining. But I don't know exactly what to make of the mystery box whole thing with Balogun and calling it a 24th player after the. I mean, It's just weird. It's a lot of weird stuff.
It is. All right, let's talk Japan for a moment. A team that I would say are.
Oh, sorry. Can we do one more thing? One player we didn't mention, but we didn't really talk about Alex Freeman, who I thought was fine. That's not who I'm talking about. Matt Freese is who I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. What's he doing on that second goal, huh? Did we didn't hit on this?
Conceding a penalty?
Yeah. So we didn't hit on this because the goal comes despite of Matt Turner kind of flying off his line and conceding a penalty. He clatters in. Is it Son, Taylor? I forget now who the player is that he clatters in.
It is Son. You also called him Matt Turner just then. I'm not giving
nice.
not giving Matt Turner any slander. How dare you?
My bad,
Joe.
Matt. My fault. That's the second time I'm mixing players up on today's show. It's a Saturday. That's
it's all good, man.
It's the weekend. Yeah, Matt Freese, after all the breakdowns have happened ahead of him, so other issues on this goal, of course, Matt Freese charges off his line, does not at all connect with the ball, completely connects with Son Heung-min, and that would be a penalty if the ball is not in the back of the net. Yeah.
He also
that's cool.
I heard him in an interview talk about how 1v1 he backs himself more than any other goalkeepers, and by his math he saves 96% of one-on-ones. You weren't saving that one. I don't know if that is necessarily a one-on-one, but that was an interesting decision to come off his line the way he did. And to some extent the first one as well. I don't think he necessarily covers himself in glory. It was not a great performance from Matt Freese on really any part of the ball.
No, that's all I had, really. Just to raise that. If we've talked about the goalkeeper position a bunch, I don't know that we're going to stop talking about that or having to talk about it anytime.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with this team, is that basically everything remains open with a very limited time to figure it all out. And I mean, that includes, like, we assume Christian Pulisic will be in the team if he's healthy. Is he on the right? Is he on the left? Who knows? Same for Tim Weah. We still aren't really sure who the number 9 is going to be. We assume it's Balogun, but who knows? Will it be Diego Luna, like, centrally by himself? Will they change the shape? And that is the question I have for you, Joe. We don't have a ton of time. We've already talked about this. So there is an argument for, like, no, you keep the same shape, you keep the same approach, you get, like, rotate a little bit, and you kind of keeping on and hope that you figure some things out. My counter to that would be back three against Japan. I would not hate it. I think Japan will be in a back three. They're capable and have played in a back four during qualifying, but they can do both. I think, yes, Korea, we're happy to kind of have the 2-0 lead, but I do think matching their shape made a difference in how the U.S. were able to defend and, on occasion, transition to attack. And so I wonder if a back three solve some problems. You get more kind of defensive strength in there with 3 center backs. You give Dest more opportunity and Arvsted more opportunity to kind of be more out-and-out attackers without them leaving 40 yards behind them if they have a center back who can cheat over to help out. And I just think it gives you a different look that you might not otherwise have. And with no Tim Weah there, we would assume, and maybe Pulisic playing like limited minutes against Japan, I wonder if having kind of like the opportunity to have 2 more creative central midfielders instead of 2 wingers appeals at all to Mauricio Pochettino. So would you like to see that 3-4-2-1 shape, or do you want to stick more with the 4-2-3-1 that we saw today?
I would be fine to see the back three shape. In general, I've been kind of against the back three concept with this U.S. player pool pretty consistently because it seems to me that a real strength of the player pool, not of the roster, I want to be clear with my words, of the player pool is central midfield, where you have Adams, who, again, real bad today, maybe something to watch going forward. Has not been great for the U.S. for a little while now. But you have Adams and McKennie and Musa and Tessman and Luna who can play in that area and Tillman who can play in that area. And I think that's an area of strength where center back is really not an area of strength for the U.S. So my whole argument has been, for the most part, I'm not in favor of adding an extra player in a weak position group in favor of a better player in a stronger position group. That doesn't make sense to me. In this roster, the central midfield is not a strength.
Yeah. The names you just listed, there are 2 of them here.
Yeah, exactly. Mauricio Pochettino's made sure of that. So I'm not totally opposed. I thought the U.S. looked liberated towards the end of this game in that back three shape. I'm almost certain that was because of the game state, not necessarily because of the shape. But when you're missing Weah, who's best as a line-stretching winger, maybe it makes sense to push the left back up higher to provide some of that verticality, although that's not entirely Max Arvsted's game. My honest answer, Taylor, is I just don't really care.
Yep.
Like, this roster, I hope and pray, for the U.S.'s sake, is not the roster we see at the World Cup. And I don't know that whatever we see tactically against Japan is going to be particularly illuminating. So I know I'm fence-sitting here, but if you want to see the back three, I'm fine with that. With a full roster, what I think the full roster would look like or should look like, I would say no.
Okay. So I would like to see the back three, and
sure.
but I agree with everything you've just said. So let's build it out really, really quickly.
Yeah.
In a back four, though. We can stay with back four for now.
Ooh, wild card.
Because I just want to see how much changes between this game and that one for us, and the Japan game, that is. I'm assuming Freese is still in goal for you?
Sure, why not? We could do Jonathan Klinsmann just for funsies. Yeah, I'd go Matt Freese again probably.
Would you like Richards and Ream?
I would like to see Richards and Banks. If we don't see Banks in this window, I'll be a little disappointed.
Okay.
Brian Sciaretta wrote a really good piece for Soccer America on Banks, who got the email from U.S. Soccer. Sorry, I know we're going long. We got the email from U.S. Soccer and assumed it was to the U20 camp that's happening right now, and clicks it, and it's like the full national team, and is stoked about it. Really good piece. Go read that. Brian does.
Are you
a great
surprised
job
that
with all
players check their email? I kind of am.
Dude, yeah. I mean, if you're not sending me a Discord message, am I really going to see it? No. I assume Banks was the same way. But I would love to see Banks. I think he's a high potential player, and that feels warranted. So Banks and Richards would be my go-to.
Fullbacks?
I would go Dest on the right, Arsene on the left again. Not because I like Arsene all that much, but because I want to see Dest on the right.
I want to see Dest get a little bit more support, especially on the defensive side of things, and then have a little bit more freedom to create on the attacking side of things. And I thought Arsene did enough to keep that spot for now.
Sure.
Midfield?
It's so uninspiring, isn't it?
It's just not much. It's just not much. It doesn't matter what you change. It's sort of like De La Torre for Berhalter.
I genuinely would start Christian Roldan in this game next to Tyler Adams, because I think Roldan has been that good for Seattle, and I don't think he did anything to dissuade me of the fact that maybe he should be playing a bit more for the U.S. in this game. So if you're looking to change something, I don't think Berhalter was very good. I don't think Adams was good either, but I would keep Adams and move Roldan into the double.
How did Berhalter get the swollen head, by the way? Was that just like
I don't know.
A momentary collision? Okay.
It must have been.
So
he collided with the sharp edge of a table at halftime. That's my new theory.
He had like a half a tennis ball sticking out of his head for people who didn't see. It did not look comfortable. He played through it, but maybe that's a reason he doesn't start. But I like Roldan Adams. Do you have Luna ahead of them then?
I would keep Luna in the lineup, especially with this roster.
Okay, and then Balogun ahead of him?
Yes, very much so.
So where is Pulisic and who's playing on the other side of him?
I would start Zendejas opposite Pulisic, and I would put Pulisic over on that right side again. Or I would put Pulisic actually more central, and I would put Zendejas on the right and Luna on the left. If I'm actually building out this shape in the same 4-2-3-1, where Pulisic then can drift and find the game, and you have Zendejas, who I think is maybe a bit better on the right, where he can cut in at times or be crafty in that right half space, and then Luna is shaded towards that left side.
And if we went 3-4-2-1, would you go Banks, Richards, and
Ream?
Okay, so then it's basically you drop Zendejas, and it's Ream, Banks, Richards, Dest, Arsene as your wingbacks, Roldan and Adams ahead of him, Pulisic and Luna as your kind of number 10s in the half space, and then Balogun up top. So roughly the same 11, but maybe a slightly different approach. As my wife and children have just gotten home, you can hear them screaming at me outside because they can see me in the window, which feels like a good time to end this recording session.
It does.
Thank you all for listening so much, and for hopefully listening all the way through without getting too rage-filled. If you're already rage-filled, hopefully this helped you calm down just a little bit, because we share your frustration and your consternation about this U.S. team. But we're going to keep on watching and keep on talking about them, Joe, because that's what we do.
Oh, yeah, baby. No, I had a really fun time talking through some things. I think there are a lot of clearly identifiable issues. The real concern right now for the U.S., the primary one is that they're still just not a great team talent-wise. The secondary one is that we don't have a lot of evidence that says that Poch is going to call up the best players or maximize this opportunity when the World Cup comes around. So plenty of reasons for concern, but intrigue continues to rule nonetheless.
Joe Lowry, thank you again. Listeners, thank you so much. I'm trying to rush this ending before my smallest daughter tries to rip open this door to the recording space.
Break down the
She
door.
is right outside screaming dada. So I will talk to you all very soon. Have a good night. Speak to you next week. Bye-bye. Hi.